It is back to school, and in some cases, it means Boston businesses want to call their workers back into the city. There's a new article in the Boston Business Journal, one of our partners here at WBZ, and it outlines the employers that are ready for that in-person engagement again. So joining us now from our partners at BBJ is Don Seiffert. Don, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
So let's start off by talking about the employers that you found who are seeking to now minimize that at-home work and get people back into city buildings.
Yeah, well, our reporter called around to more than a dozen companies locally. They include like JP Morgan Chase, TD Bank, K&L Gates Law Firm, Holy Foag, accounting firm Witham, like a number of other big employers. And not all of them, but the majority of them said they are expecting their employees to spend more time in the office this fall. They didn't necessarily say that they are upping the mandated number of days that they're going to require the employees, but just that they expect that people will be kind of in the office more than they were over the summer and earlier this year.
Okay. So now when it comes to this grand push back into the office, like
Yep.
right, like I know that we all know at some point this momentum was going to come back. But right
Yep.
now, what do you think is inspiring this push to get employees back into the office?
Well, I think that there's been a few high-profile announcements. Amazon and J.P. Morgan Chase, one of the companies I just mentioned, they've already announced that they're bringing their employees back in 5 days a week. I think for a lot of them, though, it's more they've had these mandated days in the office for a while now, but they just haven't really enforced it very closely.
Okay.
That employees maybe are supposed to be in 2 or 3 days a week, but it was no big deal if you didn't make it one week. I think a lot of them are just going to start enforcing it, and they sent emails to their employees to this effect, saying that we're going to start, counting the number of days, and we're going to actually be serious about the number of days you have to be in the office starting this fall. So I think that's a lot of it. That it's now five years after the pandemic. So people just think that that it's time to bring people in more than they were before.
Okay. Now, also, just to point out, it's not all businesses. There are still some businesses that are saying, hey, yes, we see other businesses around us want you to come back in, but
Yep.
we're still okay with this hybrid model. Like this
Yeah.
hybrid model still works for us. What do you think is the underlying reason behind some companies still providing their employees with that hybrid option?
Yeah, I mean, and that honestly, that is still the majority of the office jobs that we've talked to are some version of hybrid.
Mhm.
I think here in Boston, I mean, the same fact is true now as was true before the pandemic. We have long commutes, we have bad traffic, and a lot of times we have high cost of housing, which makes people live farther out from the city.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it really is just a combination of those things. I think it's worse here in Boston than it is in most cities across the country. So those all still are a big argument that there still should be some amount of hybrid flexibility that I think employees expect and that employers kind of acknowledge that it probably makes sense to some extent. Those things aren't going to really change, and I think a lot of employers are hesitant to really drop the hammer and say we're going to call everyone back 5 days a week.
Now, this actually takes me to my next question. So, Boston's return to office rate is actually behind
Yep.
the national percentage. Has the city suffered from a lack of people in the city spending money?
Yeah, I mean, definitely individual businesses have. I mean, you can look at some of the big restaurant chains that we all used to eat lunch at here. Boloco, Finagle a Bagel, Au Bon Pain, all of these had a lot more, it's not entirely because of the pandemic, but they had a lot more locations before. They have closed all three of those and a lot of other restaurants beyond that have really closed a lot of locations because there just simply isn't the foot traffic now that there used to be. So it certainly is hurting a lot of businesses in the city.
Now, do you see at any point this hybrid option ever completely going away? The farther that we move away from the pandemic, because we
Yeah.
know the work at home, the hybrid option, all of that grew out of just maneuvering through the unknown, right? Because at the
Hmm.
time, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how long we were going to be
Hmm.
in that space. Do you see the hybrid option ever going away completely?
Yeah. I mean, you're asking me to make a prediction, so I'm going to make a prediction, and I predict that hybrid option is probably here to stay for a lot of the reasons that I just mentioned. For some jobs, it simply makes sense. There is no reason to have them in every day. I think having employees in like 2, 3 days a week for a lot of businesses really just makes sense. You can also think of it in climate terms. I mean, this helps some companies make their climate goals, not having their employees come in every day. That cuts down on the, on the smog, everything, their footprint that they have in the office. So I think a lot of companies realize that there are actual benefits to this and that there is no big incentive to have people in every single day. And I think the last 5 years have really kind of proven that to a lot of companies that maybe were doubtful of it before then.
Is there anything else you think is important for our viewers to understand around this conversation that I did not ask you specifically?
Uh, no, I mean, I think but I do think that the climate goal is kind of a big factor of it. That's still being kind of overlooked a lot. That even though a lot of companies aren't maybe publicly talking about their climate goals as much as they used to a year, 2, 3 years ago, those are still important goals for a lot of these companies. And hybrid work is kind of a big factor for a lot of them.
That was interesting. As I heard you speak about the climate aspect, you're right. It probably is something that companies are working on, but that's not usually one of the main bullet points that
Yeah.
people hear about in terms of the decision making
Yep.
between keeping the hybrid option and bringing folks back into the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually talked to a lot of employers and people in who are talking about what they call now green hushing, which is companies that like are actually pursuing their climate goals in private, but not talking about it because they don't want to draw attention to themselves. And I think that probably this is kind of one easy way to like help with climate goals without really having to like broadcast that for fear of repercussion from federal levels and all that.
Well, it definitely gives us something new to consider the next
Yeah.
time we see an article about something like this. I think that
Yeah,
part is
exactly.
very interesting. Well, Don Seiffert from our partner at the Boston Business Journal, we thank you so much, and until next time.
Thank you.